You're out in the garden, planting some tomatoes, when your trowel hits something hard. You scrape away the dirt, and sitting right there in the roots is a massive cache of ancient, tarnished silver coins. The immediate instinct is to look over your shoulder, scoop them into a bucket, and keep your mouth shut. But centuries of English law, like the precedent established in Attorney General versus Moore, treat hiding a find like this as a severe criminal offense. Under modern rules, the second you realize you might have unearthed something historical, a legal clock starts ticking. You have exactly 14 days to report the discovery to a local coroner. If you don't, you face unlimited fines and potential prison time, which raises a terrifying question. If the law forces you to hand over your discovery, is the government just going to confiscate your newfound wealth? Not exactly. English property law functions like a branching flowchart. The age, the material, and even the exact physical depth of the object in your soil dictate who gets paid. Secretly hoarding the treasure guarantees legal ruin, but running your discovery through the strict branches of this flowchart is the only guaranteed path to a major payday. The first major test on our flowchart is the Treasure Act of 1996. This legislation replaced the ancient, convoluted rules of treasure trove with a specific checklist. For a single item to qualify, it must be over 300 years old and contain at least 10% gold or silver by weight. But if you find coins, the rules split. A hoard qualifies if it contains at least 2 gold or silver coins. If the coins are made of a base metal like bronze or copper, you need a minimum of 10 from the exact same find. And if the items are prehistoric, that precious metal requirement drops entirely. Any 2 metallic objects from that era automatically trigger the act, along with any other items buried right next to them. If your backyard discovery passes this test, it legally qualifies as treasure. At that exact moment, ownership automatically vests in the crown. You don't own it anymore. But there is a massive silver lining. Local and national museums get the right of first refusal to purchase the item. If they buy it, an independent committee determines the fair market value and pays out an ex gratia reward equal to 100% of that amount directly to you as the landowner and finder. The Treasure Act strips you of the physical artifact itself, but it legally guarantees you the full, tax-free monetary value of your find. So what happens if you dig up something that fails this test, say a 19th century bronze statue? Because it isn't treasure, we fall back to ancient common law, specifically a ruling from 1886 called Elwes versus Brigg Gas Co. The court decided that if it isn't treasure, the lawful occupier of the land owns it. The court established a very clear physical boundary. Anything firmly embedded in or forming part of the soil beneath the surface belongs entirely to the landowner. This protects you against a very specific threat. What if you weren't the one who found the statue? What if a hired gardener or an uninvited metal detectorist dug it up while you were inside? Under the case Waverley Borough Council versus Fletcher, unauthorized digging constitutes an act of trespass or damage. Even if they spotted the item first, the act of breaking your soil voids their claim. The dirt itself acts as a legal shield. If an artifact is embedded in your soil, your property rights trump the crown, the museum's, and the person holding the shovel. There is one final caveat on the flowchart. What if the object wasn't buried at all? Suppose someone drops a valuable antique ring, and it's just lying loose on top of your lawn. According to the 1982 case Parker versus British Airways Board, loose, unattached items found on the surface generally belong to the finder, not the landowner. But the courts carved out a critical exception. The finder only wins if the landowner has not manifested an intent to control the premises. For a massive commercial airport lounge, that intent might be vague, but for a private homeowner, simply having a fenced-in garden or a clearly demarcated private yard easily satisfies this requirement. By maintaining a private boundary around your property, you ensure that even loose items sitting freely on top of the grass belong to you, effectively closing off the final loophole for visiting finders. Stepping back from the mechanics of the law, you have to ask why the UK government relies on this complex branching system instead of simply seizing every historical artifact outright. Under the old, unforgiving rules of treasure trove, finders were terrified the Crown would confiscate their discoveries for nothing. As a result, they routinely melted down priceless ancient masterpieces into raw bullion just to sell the metal in secret. The modern legal framework changes the psychological math. By guaranteeing a 100% payout under the Treasure Act, or granting full ownership under common law, honesty becomes the most profitable option available. If your trowel ever strikes gold, don't panic and don't try to hide it. This flowchart was specifically designed to make sure you get paid for saving history.